December 7th, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning in the Pacific Ocean. The waters surrounding the naval base at Pearl Harbor were calm, and most American sailors were beginning their day like any other. No one could imagine that within a few minutes, history would change forever. On that morning, the Imperial forces of Japan launched a massive surprise military attack against the naval forces of the United States. It was an event that would pull America into the devastating conflict of World War II. Peaceful morning before the attack. Early that morning, the naval base at Pearl Harbor looked peaceful and routine. Battleships rested quietly in the harbor, including the mighty USS Arizona, BB-39, and USS Oklahoma, BB-37. Sailors moved across the decks, performing their regular duties. Some were preparing breakfast, others were relaxing, enjoying the calm morning air. But far away in the Pacific Ocean, something dangerous was already in motion. Japanese fleet approaches hundreds of miles away. A powerful Japanese naval strike force was advancing silently across the ocean. 6 aircraft carriers carried hundreds of warplanes ready for attack. Japanese pilots climbed into their aircraft, including the famous Mitsubishi A-6M0 fighters and Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers. Their mission was simple, but devastating. Launch a surprise attack that would cripple the American Pacific Fleet. The first warning. As the Japanese aircraft moved closer to Hawaii, an American radar station briefly detected a large group of incoming planes. But the warning was misunderstood. Officials believed the radar had detected American aircraft arriving from the mainland. No alarm was raised. The attack force continued moving toward Pearl Harbor, completely undetected. The attack begins. At 7:55 in the morning, the peaceful skies over Pearl Harbor suddenly filled with the sound of roaring engines. Japanese aircraft appeared from the clouds. Within seconds, bombs began falling. Explosions shook the harbor as battleships and airfields were struck without warning. American soldiers and sailors rushed to their positions, shocked by the sudden attack. Destruction in the harbor torpedoes slammed into battleships anchored in the harbor. One of the first ships struck was the USS Oklahoma, BB-37, which quickly began to roll over after multiple torpedo hits. Nearby ships were hit by bombs and machine gun fire. The once peaceful harbor turned into a scene of fire, smoke, and chaos. The tragedy of USS Arizona. Moments later, a catastrophic explosion occurred aboard the USS Arizona, BB-39. A bomb penetrated the ship's ammunition storage, triggering a massive blast. A huge fireball erupted into the sky, destroying the battleship within seconds. More than 1,000 sailors lost their lives in that single explosion. It became one of the most tragic moments of the entire attack. Airfields under attack. At the same time, Japanese aircraft attacked American airfields across Hawaii. Rows of American planes were destroyed on the ground before they could even take off. Hangars burned as soldiers desperately tried to fight back. Some anti-aircraft guns finally began firing toward the sky. But the attack had come too quickly. Second wave of the attack soon. A second wave of Japanese aircraft arrived. More bombs and torpedoes struck ships across the harbor. Smoke covered the sky as burning ships filled the water. Despite the surprise, American forces began mounting resistance. Anti-aircraft guns fired relentlessly, and several Japanese planes were shot down. The attack ends after nearly 2 hours of destruction. The Japanese aircraft began to withdraw. Behind them, Pearl Harbor was left devastated. Battleships were sunk or heavily damaged, airfields were destroyed, and thousands of American soldiers and sailors had been killed or wounded. The aftermath rescue teams rushed to pull survivors from the burning ships and oil-covered waters. The harbor was filled with smoke and debris. The United States had suffered one of the most shocking military attacks in its history. America responds. The next day, December 8, 1941. The President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt, addressed the nation. He described the attack with words that would become famous in history. December 7, 1941. A date which will live in infamy. Soon after, the United States officially declared war on Japan. America had entered World War II. Conclusion. The attack on Pearl Harbor changed the course of world history. It transformed a quiet naval base into a symbol of sacrifice and resilience. Today, the memory of those who lost their lives remains an important reminder of the cost of war and the courage of those who served. The events of that day continue to be remembered as one of the most. The attack on Pearl Harbor did not only destroy ships and airfields, it completely changed the course of World War II. Before this event, the United States had largely stayed out of the global conflict. Although the war had already been raging in Europe and Asia for years, many Americans believed their country should remain neutral. But the events of December 7, 1941, changed everything. The day after the attack, the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt, delivered a powerful speech to the American Congress. In that speech, he famously described the attack as a date which will live in infamy. Soon after, the United States officially declared war on Japan. Within days, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, also declared war on the United States. This turned the conflict into a truly global war involving many of the world's most powerful nations. For the United States, the attack on Pearl Harbor sparked an immediate and massive military mobilization. Factories across the country began producing ships, tanks, aircraft, and weapons at an unprecedented rate. Millions of American men and women joined the armed forces, preparing to fight in both the Pacific and European theaters of the war. In the Pacific Ocean, the United States focused on pushing back Japanese forces and reclaiming territories that had been captured during the early months of the war. Major battles such as the Battle of Midway and the Battle of Guadalcanal became turning points that gradually weakened Japan's naval and air power. Meanwhile, American forces also joined the Allied powers in Europe to fight against Nazi Germany. The entry of the United States brought enormous industrial strength, military resources, and manpower to the Allied side. This shift significantly changed the balance of power during the war. Over the next several years, the combined efforts of the Allied nations slowly pushed back Axis forces across multiple continents. Finally, in 1945, World War II came to an end after years of devastating conflict. Although the war caused immense destruction and loss of life around the world, the attack on Pearl Harbor remains one of the most pivotal moments that reshaped global history.